This is The Instigators, presented by Seneca Resorts and Casinos. Nothing else comes close.
We are going to overtime!
Yes, we are back at it in podcast form. Welcome into Instigators Overtime. Our guest today, Marty, has similarity scores based on hockeyreference.com to players like Mikhail Pavanka, Steve Ruchin, Anson Carter, Dave Poulin, Tony Granato, brother of current Sabres coach Don Granato, former Sabre Benny Hogue. I could go down the list. Does Ryan Callahan remind you of any of those players?
Maybe Dave Poulin a little bit, because Poulin was known as a defensive more type guy. He actually played on these great Canada teams. One was the Rendezvous All-Star Game and killed penalties, and I was a role guy, but had some offense to his game. And Ryan Callahan did that as well. So when I played with Cali in New York, he was the shot blocking master, right? Getting his face and body in front of everything. But he put up quite some points too and played the power play. So I would say Dave Poulin probably. I don't know, Duffer, who do you got?
No, that's a fair one indeed. Just under 400 career points for Ryan in the regular season. Of course, he played almost 900 games when you combine regular season and some deep playoff runs. And we need to remind you that when you're serious about the game, bet on Buffalo at the only sports books in Western New York. Seneca Resorts and Casinos betting counters are open daily, and self-serve betting kiosks are available 24/7 at all three locations. So whether you visit Seneca Niagara, Allegheny, or Buffalo Creek, the Sports Lounge features the latest lines and multiple screens so you never miss a play. The Sportsbook at Seneca Resorts and Casinos, where the love of the game meets the thrill of the win. Ryan Callahan. With NHLer turned NHL broadcaster Ryan Callahan, terrific local product, as we all know, and from the home office in Rochester, New York. Ryan, how are you? And what was it like being back to do another NHL game from basically home?
Yeah, I'm doing good, guys. And it was awesome last night. It was actually my third Buffalo game I've done this year, so I'm feeling right at home. I did my first one was from in the booth, and then I've gotten a chance to do two down on the ice level, which I've loved. I mean, I guess that's where I'm most comfortable. You can see everything that's happening. You feel like you're in the action. And, last night was an exciting night. Obviously, the big talk about the big assist or big goal, whatever you want to call it. But, it was a good night.
So when you're down below, do you still talk to the linesman, the referee? Do you peek over to see what guys are saying, what the trash talk is all about? See if you can up your game for your men's league games?
Yeah, well, no men's league for me. I haven't strapped the gear on, but you definitely can hear a few F-bombs back and forth, and it's a live mic, so that gets a bit interesting. And then last night we had Wes McCauley as the ref, so we all know how much he likes to chat and things like that. So there's no shortage of chatting on the ice, that's for sure.
Who's the best young trash talker you've heard?
Wow, that's a tough question. I mean, from those two games or at least last night's game, there wasn't much trash talking going on between both teams. It was kind of a quiet game, not a lot of action going on. I guess it's not trash talking, but after Zegras' goal was, or assist, I should say, was his teammates coming up to him, like just bumping him. Maybe, after the TV timeouts, everybody was laughing, coming up to him, hitting him, couldn't believe it was happening. And to kind of get a front row seat of that, of how the Sabres bench and Anaheim's bench was kind of in disbelief of what just happened. It was pretty cool to see.
Okay, well, I guess on that note, best trash talker you've ever played with and or against. Like, I know there's some, your teammates, you start laughing when they get going, and some that really get under your skin. So over your time playing, who are those two guys?
Probably one of them in both instances is Sean Avery. And you played with him too, Marty. Yeah. So he had a way to get under the other team's skin and the things he said. And sometimes you'd be sitting on the bench and cringe yourself and be like, oh boy, he went there. But yeah, he was probably the best at it. Not only the players, but also in visiting arenas. He had a way to get the fans around the bench going as well. So he was always entertaining.
Yeah, he crossed the line a few times. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, it was fun though. I enjoyed listening to him. He was quick-witted, and he had some good comments for the other guys.
I think, as you referenced, it was different for sure to see the reaction from Zegras and Milano, the laughter, the disbelief, things like that. We don't see that very often. There is humor in the game at times, but you were also a really intense competitor. I'm wondering how often you ever let the guard down enough to be able to even have something even close to a moment like Zegras and Milano shared last night.
Yeah, nothing to that level, but I think the only time you stop and you enjoy yourself is when you're up in a game, maybe, 4, 5, 6, nothing. And, you make a play, you get back to the bench and the mood's a little bit looser and you have a laugh, but that was refreshing to see. And it's refreshing to see in the league, just all these young players coming in with this kind of new attitude and, the willingness of not being scared to make plays, not being scared to try something new. And even in the interview last night with him, with, me and Bucci, when we were interviewing him, like, he has personality, right? He's a young kid and you can tell that personality comes across. And I feel like all these young kids coming in with all this talent has really shown that. And they've shown a personality as well, which I think is good for the league. It's good to grow the league, right? We're trying to market the league as much as we can. And these are the type of players and the type of guys we got to get behind and get them out there in front of, people that not necessarily are diehard hockey fans and, peel back a little bit of who these guys are. And I think he's a perfect example of that.
So I guess let's transition into young kids like Zegras and we see a lot in Buffalo. They got Dahlin. What they and how youth hockey is set up now for them to be able to explore those skills compared to you when you were 16 and you joined the Buffalo Lightning and like you could never have tried what these kids are allowed to try now. Like, how is hockey, especially at the youth level, has changed? And, tell us about your experience when you were 16 playing basically what was junior hockey.
Yeah. I mean, even back to when I was playing, minor hockey at the age of 10. I mean, we were working on systems, we were working on structure. There wasn't YouTube where you could watch all these trick shots and all these cool things that people are doing. And I will say, I think, from my generation to this generation is what you try to instill in these kids. And I'm doing a little bit with Bishop Kearney Selects. I'm helping them out is trying to get them to know the game away from the puck as well. Right. There's a game away from, doing these skills and doing these tricks. And, but it has changed. I mean, at my age at 16, going to juniors, playing for the junior, Buffalo Lightning, there's no chance I would try any of that stuff. It wasn't even in my head. So the skill level of these kids it blows my mind away. I saw it when I got to Tampa with some of those young guys. And like I said, now even helping out with this Bishop Kearney Select team, their skill level is just, it's mind boggling.
Okay. Well, on that note, I think it would appear obvious I'll count myself as an outsider here. It would appear obvious that the game needs to have progressive, welcoming coaches for talent like that. You were also a part of the Tampa organization, which has done nothing but have great success. Would you say John Cooper falls into that category? And who else might be at the top of the list as far as not being part of the old guard and being someone that you think players can really feed off of as far as their acceptance to this new style?
Yeah, I definitely think Cooper falls into that, that category. Another name that comes up and just chatting with them and watching a lot of games is Donnie Granato. Having conversations with him, and especially yesterday before the game, we talked a little bit about them, giving up goals and, there's 20 goals in the last 4 games or whatever it was. And his first thing is I'm not preaching that, all of a sudden you got to stifle the offense or stifle these chances that they're trying to do or opportunities. I'm not telling them to pack it in. I mean, that's how you ruin development. He goes, these guys have so much skill and so much talent I want them to explore it. That's how they develop and learn what they can and can't do in this league. And that was really, it was kind of eye-opening to me because you think your knee-jerk reaction would be, okay, let's tighten it up. Let's concentrate more on defensive hockey. Let's, put 5 in the box and make the team work around us. We're struggling a little bit goaltending wise. Let's try to protect our goaltender. But he thought the exact opposite. And I think that's the new wave of coaching and thinking is, with these, especially with all the young guys coming in the league, right? It used to not be like that. You used to have 1, maybe 2 young guys on your team. Now they're teams filled with them. So, that's part of their development is learning when and they can and can't make those plays, but you don't want to stifle it. And I think there's a happy balance though with that. I mean, you talk about the new guard and the old guard. I look at that Tampa Bay Lightning team I was on, and we had a lot of talent. We had a lot of freedom, but they ultimately didn't win until they realized they have to take care of the puck, right? You can't try that move at the blue line and turn the puck over and give it 2-on-1 the other way. Because for a lot of years we were like that. We outscored opponents, right? And then all of a sudden you get to playoffs and things change a little bit. It's checking's a little bit tighter, everything's a little bit harder, and you can't make some of those plays you made in the regular season. So I definitely think there's a happy balance there, but I think it's great for the league that do have these coaches coming in that's encouraging these kids to try new things and explore their talent that they definitely have.
So what you're saying is that the way we were coached under Torts in New York is not the way that Coop and Granado and those guys are teaching the game. Like, Callie, go out there and block 100 shots a game is not the way that the league should be going right now.
I think, trust me, the league didn't want me going out there and trying to go between guys' legs either. So you got to know your players. And like I said, I mean, I can't sit here and say Torts' way of thinking was wrong or is wrong, because I think there's a lot of positives of thinking that way too, right?
Yeah.
Of trying to defend, trying to make sure your right plays. And I think that's the big challenge is teaching these young kids of when you can make those plays and when you can't make those plays, right? There's times in the game to try it and there's times not to. And that's the balance these coaches are trying to do. For
the record, I love Torts. So, I mean, it was so good for me as a goalie. Plus I was a backup, so it made my job even a lot easier. So
this is more than a weekly occurrence that he professes his love for Torts, Ryan. So
that makes two of us. I owe a lot to Torts, and now to play, being with them on the other side of the camera, it's definitely interesting. It was funny when when I took this job with ESPN, I didn't know Torts was part of it. We did like our first company Zoom meeting, and all of a sudden the little box pops up and John Tortorella. I'm like, what? Like, so I text him right away. I go, is this really you? He's like, yep. I'm like, I thought we'd be together at some point again, but definitely not behind a camera. So we had a good laugh.
Hey, when you had to block shots every shift under Tortorella, what's the one piece of extra equipment you used that saved your career?
I mean, Marty would know. I had a lot of extra equipment, and it was kind of based on my previous injuries, right? So I don't know if you've obviously noticed the pad on the front of everybody's glove they have. Mm-hmm. That actually all started with me and Glenn Slater. I blocked a shot in Pittsburgh. It was actually Letang. Pretty innocent shot, but it hit me right there, kind of in between the grooves of the padding, broke my hand. And, Slats was always a guy who came down and looked at the guy's gear and why is this happening? So him and Cass, who's the equipment guy in New York, who is an absolute mastermind of, adding things to equipment, changing equipment. So him and Slats came up with that front pad on the front of their glove for me. I started using it, and then Slats made it mandatory for everybody on the team. And then it's actually gotten to the point now where manufacturers are putting it on the gloves before they ship it out to certain teams. So that was probably the biggest thing I put on, but I also put it on like on my shin pads on the inside of my ankles. I took a couple shots there and split me open. So I added some padding there, and basically everything I could do without being a goalie pad, I did eventually.
I remember the hand incident when Slats went nuts over it. So are you getting a cut from the manufacturer, or is Slats when it comes to the extra hand protection?
You know what kind of businessman he is. So he's definitely getting a royalty. I'm not seeing anything of that.
Well, what's funny, Callie, is that Cass, Cassio Marks, the equipment manager, kind of invented two things: the padding on the gloves and that loop that now appears on the back of every goalie skate. They call it the Lundy loop or Lundqvist loop, where Hank was doing the strap behind the skate as opposed to underneath the skate, and so he stitched a loop back there, and now every goalie skate has that. Like all the manufacturers do it, so he probably is getting a kickback somewhere. But I want to get into some Torts stories, but first, because you mentioned Glenn Sater, do you remember when he came into the locker room and was mad at everybody because Erik Karlsson cut his Achilles tendon and guys weren't wearing the cut-proof socks, And he said he was going to fire Cass if we didn't start wearing cut-proof socks. He was going to fire the equipment manager because it was easier to fire that guy than to get rid of all of us. I don't know if you remember. And he also said, I don't know if you guys saw last night in Quebec City, that defenseman got his leg cut. We're like, Slats, there hasn't been a team in Quebec City in 20 years. What are you talking about?
I remember that. And I hung up the socks in my stall so everybody thought I was wearing them, but I wasn't wearing them because I didn't like the way they felt. But I'm like, Cass, I'll hang them in my stall for you so Slats thinks I'm wearing them.
Just to be a good guy. And quickly, remember the Brian Boyle Tort story when he showed up late for a video meeting that one year in the playoffs?
Yeah.
You care to share a little bit about what happened that day?
Yeah. So so Torts would have the video meetings. Obviously, you can never be late for him. You had to be 5 minutes early. That whole ordeal. So we're in a meeting. We're probably 10 minutes into it, and I guess Boiler is going to the bathroom. He comes out of the bathroom, and I remember Steve Eminger wasn't in the meeting either. He was riding the bike because he was hurt, so he didn't have to be in the meeting. So Eminger tells the story the best. He runs into the weight room. He knows there's a meeting going on, and he's going to Emmy. He's like, should I go in there? Shouldn't I go in there? Should I go in there? Shouldn't I go in there? And he's kind of going back and forth. So finally, he's like, I'm going to go in there. So he comes in, he slams the door open, right? Like bursts through the door, and Torts and everybody kind of looks at him, and he goes, I was taking a screams it. Just screams, I'm taking a So it almost caught Torts by such surprise that he looked at Boiler kind of weird. He goes, all right, go sit down. So he just goes sit down. He continues the meeting.
That was the first and only time I believe somebody was ever late. And even if you were on time, usually you were late. So you never went into the meeting. But Boiler, the attack with the door open and everything just made it perfect. Oh, man, that was great.
He caught Ryan with such surprise, he didn't know what to say.
Did you ever, on your path to all these interactions with Tortorella in your NHL career, did you ever think that you would land here in Buffalo at any point? And obviously, we saw your tweet not long ago, directed towards RJ here in his final season. Yeah. So we know the passion and the love for the team and RJ. Take us through all of those thoughts on your way to what was an incredibly long and successful NHL career.
Yeah. And I think from the tweet, I grew up a Sabres fan. I lived and died the Sabres. My mom still tells me stories of Sabres would lose a regular season game and I'd go to bed crying. So, I loved them. And I still remember watching the old tapes, Darren Pupa tapes. I used to watch it, basically broke the tape. I forget what year it was, but it was a recap of their year. Every morning I'd wake up and I'd watch it. But yeah, so then I get drafted by New York. I wanted to stay there my whole career. Things kind of went south without getting into that whole thing of my contract year. I ended up getting traded to Tampa, and I'm becoming a free agent at the end of the year. And once I got traded to Tampa, Buffalo was on my radar right away. To be honest with you, in the back of my head, I'm like, I'm going to free agency. Like maybe Buffalo is where I want to go. There's a team there, a bit of a rebuild, a bit of a disorganized at the time for sure. I mean, there's no secret about that. So I got to Tampa. I was planning on going to free agency. Buffalo was right at the top of my list. There were some conversations going on there with the agents and everything else that, behind the scenes that don't happen, that happen. So I kind of knew there was some interest as well from Buffalo on their part. So what happened is I get to Tampa and I see how talented that team is. I fell in love with the city right away, the fans there. So I was really close to going to free agency. And then I saw everything that Tampa was doing. They had a chance to win, relatively quickly. Obviously, we went to the Stanley Cup Finals the next year. So it was about a week before free agency when I could actually talk to other teams. And Steve Yzerman kind of put the pressure on me because I still at that point wanted to wait and see maybe Buffalo offers something. And that was the other team, that I was thinking was the Buffalo Sabres. And just because I love them so much being from Rochester and everything else. And Yzerman started cranking the gears on me a little bit. And I'm like, you know what? I just went through so much in New York of contract negotiations, everything else. I like it in Tampa. My family likes it there. Good situation. So I ended up signing that contract, but if things didn't work out, in Tampa, or I got traded somewhere else, I definitely think I could have been wearing that Sabres jersey.
Did you ask any of the Sabres players or talk to them? I mean, you played with Miller in the Olympics. You probably know players that play, or Gianta. Did you inquire? Did you make phone calls and say, hey, what's it like? And kind of, build it up a little bit for you to want to come?
Yeah, I mean, you know how it is. Players talk, right? And even just in passing, what's it like? What's it like there? What's the organization like? Things like that. I mean, Gianta he ended up signing that year, I think, in Buffalo, so he wasn't there yet. But yeah, just the point that team was in their organization and where they were on the rebuild compared to Tampa, where it's a win now situation. It just made sense for me to, I mean, how a competitive guy like everybody else, I want to win, right? I wanted to win a Stanley Cup, and I thought my best chance to do that was in Tampa.
Ryan, how are you physically? Because you played the game at such a demanding level and for a long time, and we obviously know how it ended. And I think it's important for people to always understand the sacrifice that is made by someone who plays the game as long as you did. And we also need to remind people that, like, the average career in the NHL is not that long, and thus the ultimate physical sacrifice can take a huge toll. So out of genuine concern, I'd love to know how you are on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I mean, day-to-day, I'm good. I still could play golf, run around with the kids, things like that. Obviously, I left the game. I retired due to a degenerative disc disease in my back that still bothers me. I mean, I still had to do things to maintain it. And I mean, I guess like everybody else, I wake up some mornings and it's tough to get around, your back hurts, and you kind of learn to live with that. And then obviously I've had 2 shoulder surgeries, 2 hip surgeries. And I think anybody who's gone through that or have had those surgeries they're never completely 100% again. There's times, and this Rochester winter sometimes, and the cold of it, it takes a little bit more to get going in the morning. But all in all, I mean, my head's good, which, is the biggest thing I look at after a long career is, knock on wood, I didn't get any concussions at all. So my head is good, and my body takes me a little bit longer to get going in the morning, but I was absolutely blessed to have the long career I did. And, people ask, like, is it tough to go out that way? And, I didn't look at it like that. I looked at the 13 years I played, and how lucky I was to play that long, coming from Rochester, young kid from Rochester, New York, and ended up playing for the original 6 team, captain there, and then a couple of good runs in the playoffs with Tampa. So I'm lucky, very, very lucky.
I was just going to say, Callie, you were a great captain. Truly enjoyed playing with you and Danny G and that whole crew in New York my last few years. And so that was definitely fun. But because I never got to really put you on the spot in New York, so I'm going to put you on the spot here with a few this or that. So basically, I'm going to, throw a couple of things at you, and let's just see what sticks. So better coach, Torts or Coop?
Wow.
This or that. See, I'm starting right off the bat.
Jeez, like, this is serious. Coming on the cast, there was like, you know what? It's going to be easy questions. We're going to have some fun. For the development of my career and to get me to where I was and let me play 13 years in the league, John Tortorella.
Okay. What did you like more, playing on the power play or on the penalty kill?
Oh, wow. Penalty kill. Actually, I took a lot of pride in the penalty kill. I really did.
Yeah, I thought you may say so. You ended up with a lot of points on the power play still, like you were a net front guy and whatever, yeah. But I know you took a lot of pride in the penalty kill, so I thought you would say that. What's the better route? I know you went OHL, major, junior, but now if somebody came to you and said, oh, I'm thinking of going college or major, junior, this or that, which route do you think is best?
It's funny you said that, because I do get this question a lot, actually, from parents and things like that. And I'd love to play your game and play this or that, but I really think it's based on the individual. I do. Like, it's based on the kid. Like, it's based on what the family wants, what the kid wants. Marty. I mean, I don't think there's a better route. I think OHL was my best route to get to the NHL, to get where I wanted to go. But there's kids that college is the better route for them. So,
okay. Well, sitting on the fence on that one, we'll allow one, but there's a couple of tough ones coming up. So you can't sit on the fence in those. I got two more. A reporter to deal with. Okay. If I said you have to deal with Larry Brooks every day for the rest of your career, or everybody else in the world, Brooksy or the field, which one do you deal with? This or that?
I'm gonna pick Brooksy. He was actually kind to me. I don't think I had too many articles where he shredded me. So I'll go Brooksy with that one. I'll give him some love. I
enjoyed Brooksy. And last but not least, which one was the better goal you saw live? The Milano from Zegras against Buffalo Sabres on Tuesday night, or the Tomas Hertl in San Jose that kind of sent me into retirement? This or that? Which one did you like best?
Marty, I love you, buddy. I'm going to go Zegras for sure. There's no way I'm going to bury you.
Duffer's going Hertl for sure.
Yeah, I go Hertl every time, no matter what the situation is. Okay, no dis or dats, but just rapid fire as quickly as possible. The one memory of your World Junior experience, what stands out?
Beating Russia, game 1 of that tournament in North Dakota on home soil. That was pretty special. That building was crazy. They're going nuts.
And one from each Olympic experience.
From Vancouver would be my best experience is having my family there, sharing it with them. After practice, we'd practice in the morning. I'd spend the whole day with my family walking around that city. It was vibrant. I could talk forever about that Olympics. It was awesome. And then Sochi, my best experience there, putting on my country's colors, getting to play in the Olympics, I guess. There wasn't, I'm going to be honest with you, there wasn't too many positives out of Sochi. My family wasn't there. We had to stay in the village. A quick story. I know this is a quick hit, but
good bathrooms, right? In the village. Did you guys have the dual crappers?
Oh yeah, it's great. And then what was unsettling is the village was right on the Black Sea, right? And they had a U.S. warship just off in the Black Sea that you could see from the village, and that was our escape route for U.S. athletes if things went south. So you'd wake up every morning, you'd see that ship, and you'd be like, "Oh, this is awesome." Let me go enjoy myself while I got U.S. military ready to strip me out of here in case things go south. So it was tough. It was tough, but it was fun to represent my country.
All right. Well, TJ Oshie was pretty prolific there for a moment or two as well. That was fun. Yeah. Last one, your hopes as a broadcaster. What do you dream of growing into?
Yeah. To be honest, my expectations, I'm going out there and I'm having fun with it. I'm enjoying myself. I'm not putting too much pressure. I guess my hopes and dreams would, I think my biggest thing right now is I'd love to call some playoff games, and be an analysis between the benches for some playoff games, feel that hype again. I was saying to Buchagras last night is, that first game I did in Buffalo and I was down between the benches was the first time in my career since I finished playing that I missed the game, that being on the ice, being down that close and seeing the energy, seeing the guys. It's probably the first time since I retired where I was like, man, I wish I was on the ice. So I've enjoyed it so far. I'm having fun with it, working with a good crew, but I'm not putting too much pressure on myself for it.
Does the chicken parm shtick ever get old?
I absolutely love chicken parm, so it's never going to get old with me.
You're a meatball guy.
Marty, last word?
No, like I said, Kelly, I didn't really know you, even though you were from Rochester. And when I got to play with you in New York, I truly enjoyed it. You do a fantastic job. I actually love that you stole Bucci's play-by-play for a little bit yesterday in the game while he was eating. You did a great job at that. So I can't wait to watch more of you on the tube. It was awesome.
Thanks, Marty. I still remember being a kid at ESL Sports Center.
Yep.
I was going on the ice. Might even just been like a skate and shoot or something like that. And we walked by the Amerks room, and I still remember you were sitting there surrounded by 3 or 4 reporters.
That never happened.
And getting interviewed, and only if I knew you were the one that grabbed the reporters and been bending their ear. If I knew when I was a kid, that's actually what you were doing.
Was he unrolling the tape at the time as well off of his ankles?
Yeah, he might have been. Holy cow.
What a noise that was. All right, Ryan, thank you so much for joining the podcast. We'll see you soon.
Awesome, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Looking forward to seeing how Ryan Callahan continues in his broadcasting career. Definitely the passion for the game has never left, Marty. And that's kind of what leads us into our 3 stars every week, because beyond the blue and gold, there are always stories that catch our eye and need to, in fact, be elevated to a higher status. So take it away with your 3 this week.
Okay, so my 3 stars. First, I'm going to start with Kirill Kaprizov of the Minnesota Wild. He's got 19 points in his last 10 games, 12 points in his last 6. Look, he was a little bit more of a latecomer coming over from the KHL, had 51 points in 55 games last year. He's over a point a game this year. And the Minnesota Wild, if you haven't watched them, go and watch the Wild game on TV. If they're on TNT, ESPN Plus, or if you have the NHL package, they're fun to watch. So Kirill Kaprizov, number 3 star. Number 2 star, Cam Talbot, won his last 5. I'm telling you, he may be a sneaky guy that comes in for Team Canada if NHL players go to the Olympics. He's played so well on a team that gives up a lot of chances. He's won his last 5. He's only given up 8 goals in his last 5 games, I believe, and it's a .945 save percentage in that span. So amazing. And the number 1 star, because I picked 2 Minnesota Wild, I'm going to go with the Minnesota Wild, who are now 8-1-1 in their last 10, won 7 in a row, and they beat teams like Edmonton, Toronto, Tampa, Winnipeg. So look out, the Wild is hot right now.
Okay, this is going to feel like picking on Chuck Fletcher, who I happen to like, but that's Chuck's former team that you're elevating. I'm going to throw in his current team as the 3rd star this week, the Philadelphia Flyers. Oh. Not because of anything they're doing success-wise on the ice, but because they're always an interesting story. And I don't know whether it's because misery can love company sometimes, but I tend to gravitate towards the Flyers and their current predicament. Sorry, Chuck. Number 2 would be stealing from your storyline, and that is good friend of the show and of hockey in general, Marcus Foligno. Last year, he was on an amazing pace. The game that he plays ultimately cost him time due to injury. Well, he's back to that goal scoring level and on a 30-plus goal pace right now with this impressive story that is the Minnesota Wild. 11 goals in his first 25 games. Keep it up, Marcus. And number 1, perhaps for different reasons, although it's almost always the same reason, Alex Ovechkin. When he scored his goal against Columbus, I was reminded that Ovi had just reached 50 goals in his last 79 games, which is absurd. And yet, in his next game, his celebration for a primary assist on John Carlson's goal, where he should have, based on his track record, could have easily scored from a prime position, reminded me of how much Ovechkin is, in fact, the leader and team player that people sometimes wondered whether he would be, which was always ridiculous to me, and yet so fun to watch. So keep it going, Ovi. Lot of things going on around the NHL, Marty.
It was really funny because I noticed the same thing. He's on the half wall, like cheering with the fans and celebrating like he scored. John Carlson ends up behind the net and he's pointing at Ovi like, hey, come and join us, buddy. That's all on you, this one. So a little bit like Forsberg when he kept pointing to Granlund after every goal that he scored, basically like, hey, like that was your play. That was you. Yeah. So very much like that. But again, that's the first time I noticed Ovi celebrating after an assist, and it almost felt like he had actually scored a goal.
And speaking of Forsberg, although not his brother or his father, shame on the Ottawa Senators for not starting Anton Forsberg in quest of a 4th straight win, and they turned to Gustafsson and lost. That was disappointing to see.
Yeah, you're a big Forsberg guy. Peter, Philip, Anton, Pat, Joe, and Jeff Forsberg. There's got to be more coming, right? So you're a big Forsberg guy.
Here's my Forsberg list. Peter, Philip, way down is Anton, but that's only based on how long it took him to get his first NHL win.
Again, you know what? Because we saw the Anaheim Ducks in town, and Sonny Milano cleared waivers. Sometimes it reminds us of a guy like Jason Pominville cleared waivers and turned out to be an amazing NHL player. And how about that trade that brought in Philip Forsberg to the Nashville Predators when the Washington Capitals traded Forsberg to the Predators for Martin Erat?
Mhm.
And like, it just was one of the worst trades result-wise in
Yes.
NHL history. Unbelievable.
Yeah, now time has gone on, and the Predators do wonder whether Forsberg will be part of their future.
Yeah.
They're right in the middle of that. They're in that dangerous position of, are we good enough or do we rebuild? And the Predators have to figure that out. But so far this year, especially with Forsberg's recent reemergence, they're right in the thick of it in the Western Conference.
Yeah.
Fantastic to have Ryan Callahan as a guest. Even better to have you with us as always on Instigators Overtime, presented by Seneca Resorts and Casinos.